can't go out without changing my clothes, my shoes, my body posture. I can't do what I want to do with my own body, and who in the hell set things up like this? I was wrong again to be me being me where I was. Wrong to be who I am. I am very familiar with the problems of the CIA, and the problems of white America in general, and the problems of the teachers and the preachers and the FBI and the social workers and my particular mom and dad. I am very familiar with the problems because the problems turn out to be, I am the history of the terrorized incarceration of myself. I am the history of battery, assault, and limitless armies against whatever I want to do with my mind and my body and my soul. I am not wrong. Wrong is not my name. And I can't tell you who the hell set things up like this, but I can tell you that from now on, my resistance, my simple
Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, see, I already messed up. I wanted to start like this. Peace reflections. Peace reflections.
Peace, my reflections.
Have you seen the Nature Boy documentary? Dr. Ball?
No, sorry. Should I?
No.
I'm going to tell you a little bit about it.
Please.
How are you all doing in this moment?
Pretty good.
As good as could be expected. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we're so happy to have you. We'll do the introduction. We'll introduce you in a minute. But one of the things that we like to start our show with is talk about what's going on in our Black girl world. And though you may not be a Black girl, Dr. Ball, Jared, you do live in a Black girl world. So we want to know what's happening in your Black girl world too. I'll start though to give you a little bit of time. So a Nature Boy, the cult of Nature Boy, that's what's going on in my Black girl world. There is a documentary on Hulu, 4-part series about this guy who started a cult. You don't know this about me, but I love a cult documentary. I love them. And this one, oh man, it is unlike any other that I've seen before, and I've seen a whole lot of them. So there's this young man from the Bronx, maybe Brooklyn. I don't know where.
Harlem.
Harlem?
She said New York's all the same.
New York City, the big borough of New York City. Anyway, he ends up spending most of his time in Atlanta. And we're just gonna skip around. He stops taking baths, starts only eating fruit, and is like, we have to get back to nature. So call me Nature Boy. He sells everything that he has. He's a scammer. We're just gonna start there. From the very beginning, he's a scammer. He was a stripper. Then he decided that he would be gay for pay. And then he stopped taking baths. Okay, so he's gonna go and he's gonna get back to nature. And he makes this call out to people to come join him. A couple guys show up, and they go to Costa Rica. Is it Costa Rica first? I think it's Costa Rica. Honduras. Okay, so they're there. Of course, they need women. So they're like, come. Women come, and the cult goes from, like, oh, people who just want to get back to nature to yikes.
To yikes.
Lots of
literally to yikes. It went from to yikes.
Yeah. So, is it interesting to watch and fascinating and mind-blowing? Yes. Since I've watched it, however, I've learned that there's a 40-part series on YouTube. And I started watching that, but I was like, I'm not going to get into that. And then I learned, however, that Lots of salacious details were left out. So I'm probably going to commit to this 40-part series. But yeah, that's what's going on in my Black girl world. Should you watch it? Charity says no, I say yes.
Yeah, I say no. Does that mean you shouldn't watch it? Because I say you shouldn't watch it. No, not at all. Right.
No, you should listen to me. Charity, what's going on in your Black girl world?
Um, right now it's the good, bad, and ugly of Memphis. So, jeez. The good is the Say Yes tour was in Memphis last night, so I went. I always talk about how artists I like don't stop in Memphis. So the fact that, Floetry, Raheem Devon, and Teacher Moses, that's like 2004 top level artists,
Mm-hmm.
all in the same place. I was like, I'm gonna go. Show was amazing. I think they started early, or maybe they started on time, and I thought that
Oh
because
wow.
they I figured they would start late, but I almost missed Teacher's whole set. She can sing, so I enjoy. She can sing, she can perform. The band was great. Um, Raheem Devon you can tell Raheem Devon has been a headliner before. His set was amazing. Did a lot of crowd stuff. And Floetry set was dope. They talked a lot about healing and reconciliation, and you know how essentially life over time changes, and you just got to kind of roll with the changes. Then becoming friends at like 12, having this great friendship and this stardom, and then like not speaking to each other for years. So it was like you could see that they were being kind of like healed and appreciative of just the moment, and they were bringing the crowd into that. So it was really dope. I think people forget that Floetry has a lot of like rhyming and poetry parts in their songs.
Mm-hmm.
So some people who are fans, right, were with it, but some people were like, when the lady gonna sing again? And then some people are like, I didn't realize how much I don't like her voice. So it was a cool mix. I appreciated it. I thought it was dope. So that was the good. The bad, um, I'm to the point where I don't like Memphis being people's emotional support city. Like, if you want
Tell us more
to
about
feel
that.
bad, you can look to something happening in Memphis. If you want to feel good, you can look for something happening in Memphis. It's like people are turning to Memphis just to feel something, right? So there's all this talk about the redistricting and gerrymandering. Um, so people are like, "That's right, Memphis always gonna fight," and it's like the the, the house passed the map. So the people with the arms locked and everything and getting arrested, that's theater, right? Because the maps are passed. It's like they already passed. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not like that's going to be changed because people are on social media, or because it's like there's like 10 cameras for every one person who's like doing some type of demonstration. Again, beautiful theater, very entertaining. But what happens is people outside of the know, they get so responsive, like, oh, that's right, like, show us the way. And it's like that's that's not how any of this works. Um, so I say the bad because, and this is where it turns to ugly. So me being a person I am, I was like, let me put some insight in the conversation about gerrymandering, just letting people know that the ninth district in Tennessee, which is Memphis's district, has been represented by a white dude for the last 20 years. So the idea that y'all are fighting because they're trying to take away black representation in the district when the district has been represented by a white man for 20 years is a little bit misplaced. So I
Mm-hmm.
was pointing that out. And then the bad comes because like all the white women in District 9 were like, he's a good guy and how dare you talk bad about him. And I was like, I didn't. I met him in a black restaurant and we had a conversation. He helped file the articles of impeachment against Donald Trump. He's been very adamant about not diluting black political power. But the white women were like, how dare you talk about, like, I could hear the "can I speak to your manager" in the threads that they were sending. So that's the ugly. But yeah, like, just Memphis is a proxy city. You want to feel good, look at Memphis, jig music. You want to feel bad? Look at Memphis Crime. Like it's just a tiring experience. But the show is amazing, and I still I'm in this city, and I move around in it as I can. So that's what's going on in my world. I'm sure my threads are still full of people called. One woman called me an effing idiot, and I was like, I would love to meet you somewhere, like in person. So,
Wow. Jared, what's happening in your Black girl world?
That's, first of all, it's an honor to be on here with you both and to see you, Dr. Clay, Dr. Charity again, see you both again. And it's interesting. It's funny. A couple things. One, I also got cussed out over the phone this past week by somebody. I was like, I was thinking, I would love to see how this would have gone in person. But then the flip side is, I'm 54 and broken. So I don't want to see how this would have gone in person because sometimes I forget where I am. That the mind, acts outside the body sometimes. And I'm like, as soon as I have to start to move, then I'm like, oh wait, let me slow down. But yeah, it was still one of those.
Let's talk it out.
Say that again.
I said, let's talk it out instead.
Yeah. I mean, but initially it was still kind of like, wow, this is we're taking full advantage of the phone right now. But the other overlap is that I was just reminded that I've both met Raheem Devon once upon a time. I've had the pleasure of seeing him perform live, and I saw him perform live when he was called up to be the replacement last minute when somebody couldn't make it. And I've always taken it as to his and his band's professionalism. They like, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready, and they showed up and killed it. I was like, wow. So anyway, salute to that. And then interestingly, we also have a fascinating 6 degrees of separation overlap too in our private lives, which is interesting. But I have to save that for the memoirs one day. But very, very talented. He and his band, that was, so I'm sure, but other than that, I don't know if either of you are affected by this, but I literally just checked as you all were talking and just got back into my Canvas after that national hack of Canvas in the universities. We were wiped out at Morgan State for almost 48 hours as grades are due, assignments are due. I got a whole bevy of panicking emails from students. So that's that. Other than that, it's just a bunch of silly first world nonsense. I'm fortunate enough that if I don't look outside my 4 walls, the world is beautiful. It's just as soon as I look outside, I'm like, oh snap.
Here we go, man.
But yeah. Other than that, so yeah. Canvas being down was about as bad as it's been for me these last few days. So I'm good. I'm good.
Good to hear. I was unaffected because I have.
Were you?
Yeah, because I heard students turned in all their stuff like weeks ago. I shut it down early. I was like, I'm not gonna drag this out.
Well, usually I do the same. So usually I make everything due for the most part by the end of the last day of classes, but that was yesterday. So that's why they were like, the timing, whoever did this, the time. And then I'm like, I know you get data that you can turn over, but I'm like, of all the things to hack, if you really want to hold universities hostage, it's not Canvas you should hack. It's the actual, for instance, grade portal that because like Canvas is not where faculty, at least on our end, submit grades. So it's just the calculating and the assignments. but you have to actually go into the university portal. If they really wanted to do damage, I would have thought that's what they should have.
That's what happened when I was at Xavier. Got hacked. Couldn't turn in grades. Couldn't get financial aid stuff. Like it was
Now that's
that it worked.
I
Like
bet.
students couldn't get scholarships because they couldn't get transcripts. It was well played.
And that's when you start getting the parents,
Yeah,
and the boosters,
it was bad.
and the alumni, and everybody start. That's when everything starts to collapse. But Canvas, I was like, I don't know, but I don't know anyway. It was just inconvenient.
Someone in the chat said they have Brightspace. I'm sorry, Brightspace there's levels. There's levels.
Poncho salute. I don't know anything about Brightspace.
Brightspace is terrible.
I never even heard of Brightspace.
Moodle is
I haven't either.
Canvas is a decent working one. But yes, pen and paper. I actually have my students make collages and story maps this semester. So super fun stuff. Make a story map, put all the locations and the information about them, and then make a collage using the public archives. So
I should do something like that too next semester. I need to change it up a little bit. I struggled this semester. This was a difficult semester for some reason. But yeah, I might have to. Maybe I need a little switch up. A little intellectual feng shui.
Yeah, because between the AI and I don't like grading stuff I don't like to read. So I'm trying to assign stuff.
I know that's right.
Oh, if you turn this in, I'll enjoy this. Because otherwise, I tell students, I'm going to put as much effort into grading this as you put into doing it. And then we just going to see where that gets us.
Oh, they don't ever want me to do that. Don't do that. Don't ask me to do that because it'll be a mess.
Listen, my professor is trash. Like, they hate me. She wants us all to fail.
Well, I will say this, and one day I will be compelled, I think, to divulge who told me this, but I will say that many years ago, a legend in Black studies told me off the record that as a method of job protection, they make everything as easy as possible for the students. And I have witnessed someone who wanted to get rid of me. The first thing she did was open up my evaluations, and she frowned at the fact that they were all good because she was trying to find that, she was ready. But I think there's value in that, unfortunately, and it creates another set of contradictions. But because I was in his class one day, and I remember, and I was like, there was a good component that was not paying attention. And I was like, how could you not? This is a legend. The lecture is fire. And then afterwards, I was like, how do you let them get away with that? Like, because at the beginning of my career, I was falling apart. I was like, if you drifted off anywhere, I was like, stop, pay attention, get off the phone, close that. Look at it. And he was just like, listen, you take too much time and energy doing that. You get distracted, and then they all hate on you. And then
I would imagine that makes it less enjoyable for you.
It did, yeah. I mean, I took, as soon as I adopted a version of that method, I had to tailor it. Obviously, we have to tailor things to our own, but that's true. I don't police the classroom quite in the same way. Other than sleeping, I can't, the sleeping thing, if you fall asleep, I can't. I'm like, I'm putting in work. I'm doing, how could you fall asleep? This is too interesting. And then the idea that somebody's eyes are, in my face, I just can't. But other than that, I don't, but yeah. So anyway, but that's all I've really been dealing with these last few days and weeks. Everything's,
Jared Ball is a husband, a father, a brother, a friend, a truth seeker, educator, informal and formal, an author, an award winner, a multimedia specialist, and most important of all to me, an all around good human.
Oh,
And we want to spend the rest of our time together with you, Jared, talking about your seminal work, The Myth and Propaganda of Black Buying Power. But of course, because of where we are, we want to frame the conversation and your work um, with Black girls and women in mind in particular. And as Charity and I were talking about this, uh, one of the things that came up right away, how do we situate this, was largely about um, self care, the self care industry, beauty, that kind of thing, travel. There's Black girl travel, Black girl this, Black girl that. And so, yeah, I would appreciate if you would give just a little bit of a frame for anyone who comes across this and is unfamiliar with your work. And then let's just have a conversation.
sure. Thank you for all of that. The very short of it is that the first thing I would want to encourage at this point is that whenever people see the claim associated with anyone, but in particular Black people, that there's this now approaching 2 point whatever trillion in buying power, that they first start with the footnotes and the source and the citation. And what they'll start to note is that all the claims come from really one, but more or less one of three sources, and all of them are related to not informing Black people of their actual relationship to the economy. These are not claims associated with income or wealth or any of the actual markers that people would use to assess anyone's economic condition. What they'll notice is that if you pay attention to the claims, they're all associated to marketing and advertising and the measurement, so to speak, because they claim ultimately these are estimates and projections. But they're an attempt to measure, in this case, Black people's ability to enrich the owners of the economy. That is, the corporations that produce the goods, market the goods, distribute the goods, and then the people who own all of those processes. So the term power in the phrase buying power is often misrepresented, unfortunately, in Black targeted media or the Black press. And it's really, again, only a measurement of the power in this is, again, the measurement of the ability to enrich someone else. It's not not a measurement of an actual economic or certainly political power that Black people have. So I've just been trying to make a small dent, in this argument. It is a subset. It is better understood as a narrative as opposed to an economic analysis. It's better understood as mythology or a claim, much like Black capitalism and other claims associated with capitalism and many others. But it's not. One other thing I've been trying to highlight more recently is that, because I've been mentioning it for years, but just to point it out more is that if anyone ever engages in an attempt to study the economy or economics, they'll see that no one uses buying power as an assessment. Like, it's only used in marketing and advertising spaces or in misunderstood claims that some make as a response, as an offshoot of those claims and narratives and stories that are promoted. So yeah, I'll stop there, and we just in terms of other than, I'm sorry, one other thing I think it's important to say is that, the real point of the claim ultimately is to get Black people away from radical analysis in politics. That's I think another point I want to make when talking about it as well.
Get us away from it for what reason?
Well, because it's understood, anyone who understands how capitalism works and how this economy works and how Black people relate to that economy, everybody understands that there is no pathway to equality, there is no pathway to parity or liberation through capitalism or entrepreneurialism or business or circulating dollars or all these associated mythologies. So the only pathways to liberation are through radical movements and politics of whatever variety. We could, debate or argue that maybe, but it's all of those ideas that we're meant to be kept away from. So there have been overt and explicit attempts historically by those in power to say we want, Nixon most famously, but to say we want to move Black people's analysis and arguments around Black power away from socialism, away from Pan-Africanism, away from anti-colonialism, and into pockets that are controllable, and that is mainstream political, electoral politics and business. Because everybody knows nobody, the biggest businesses and wealth in general is not produced by, again, poor people starting small businesses and pooling what limited resources they have into, and then generating tremendous amounts of wealth. That's just not how it's done. So if you can convince people that their only pathway to freedom is a pathway that will never get them free, and in turn have them not attempting or even thinking other forms of struggle are necessary, then it's beautiful and safe for the ruling elite.
Yeah, it is. I think you made a great connection between how this myth that isn't used in economics for analysis has become a linchpin of political campaigns, right? And I think that's the key, because if it was just limited to economics, I believe that people would more clearly see how it doesn't work. But when it's wrapped into political conversations about change and about representation and all these other things that have been marketed to us as, Derek Bell calls like racial symbols, then the myth has more validity. Because if you, like you say, if you just put the money together, you'll see that doesn't work, right? And in political conversations, it gets spun like we can take this Black buying power that is used to consume and just transfer that over into building like Black wealth or intergenerational wealth, when it literally doesn't work like that. Because I hear people saying, well, if we just to stop buying Jordans and buy a fourplex conversation, like, and using the idea of Black buying power to say, well, if we didn't spend it on this and just spent it on that, one, spending it on either is playing into the system, and two, you don't actually have any of it to spend, right? Most of this is debt consumerism, right? So I think that's a great point. And I think because Black women are more visible in terms of political organizing most recently, and also we're great for marketing, right? If you can get Black women to market something, it can be successful. So I do think there have been concerted efforts, like Natalie said, through this idea of self-care, which has been stripped of its radicality. It's been stripped of its fundamental necessity for communalism within Black communities. I think that's been used to like isolate or individualize Black women's self-care in a way that makes us consumers in a way that we believe, like you said, I can manicure, pedicure, girl trip my way into liberation. And that's kind of, yeah.
But that's also, I think, that's the height of capitalism, right? Because you have to individualize it first. If you individualize it, then it's easier to consumerize it, like make it a thing that can be purchasable. So then I'm going to buy my way to care and wellness, which is liberation. So it's never about the collective, because anything about the collective, anything about a collective is going to be scary to someone who is trying to push you away from, even if it's not the kind of liberation aspirations that we have, even if it's just on the spectrum. If you do it as a collective, you're more likely to get there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But so much of the messaging is the opposite, and that's a large part of the problem. And then so a couple of things. One, in terms of the marketing community, in the research they put out, and however we want to assess it is again up for discussion or debate. But what they claim, to your point, Dr. Clay, is that Black women are essential for marketing and branding, and Black women do have a particular not only impact, but a particular engagement with the media environment and with certain tendencies and consumption of both products and media. And one thing that I thought was interesting, and I should have looked up the details, so I'll just do the stereotypical the cliche of it's in my book. But one of the points, and I should make more of this point. There was a woman, for some reason I want to say Cheryl Grace, but I'm not sure if I have that name right. Cheryl McIntyre, maybe.
Cheryl.
And maybe I'm wrong on that too. But we'll just say, because the point was that this was a Black woman who was at the time working for Nielsen, and she was the front person for these marketing projects that would assess the consumption habits of Black people, and then have that dumped into these arguments that Nielsen would produce around Black people's buying power. And at one point, she ends up suing Nielsen because they were not promoting and paying her and other Black women appropriately. Something like that. And so somewhere in there, and somewhere in there, I thought that this was sort of a perfect, you're here promoting this mythology around Black strength and economic power and the impact of Black women, but you as a Black woman, as is the case when you actually read economic data or read actual economic data, you as a Black woman are underpaid and underappreciated and undervalued in the place where you actually are in the leadership. You are in the executive. And I just thought, I don't know, somewhere in there there's something diabolically poetic. I don't know, but it was just and the other thing I keep, I'm in this slow motion project. Who knows when it'll ever get done. But one of the things that I am wanting to make the point about to what you both have raised is that in her work, The Other Side of Terror, Erica Edwards is showing how Black women have been positioned in popular media to be the representatives and the sort of leaders of American and Western empire. So you see all these Black women playing roles as the CIA chief and the president and the this and the that. And Edwards is making this point, at least as I'm interpreting it, but the lived reality is anti-blackness and suffering, and yet there's this projection through Black women of the value of American empire, while we see something, I think, that's there's a parallel to this in these discussions here, where Black women are held up as the innovators and the pushers of culture and business and the drivers of the economy and sales and all these Black girl magic and all of these things, and yet 300,000 Black women lost their jobs a few months ago from the federal government fire. And then, why are so many Black women and Black people in general dependent on federal government jobs in the first place? Because the private sector has never been of any great value. So it's not that the government is some utopia, but the reason they were there to be susceptible to those firings in the first place is because the private sector has not been a place where Black people could thrive. So to then turn around and use Black women to promote the private sector and entrepreneurialism is, again, diabolical. Yeah. So anyway, somewhere in there, I think you all followed me. There's a sense, there's a trail of logic in there somewhere. I don't think I lost you. I hope I didn't lose anybody on that.
Not at all. The entrepreneurialism for me, it's really, that one really bothers me. I think just because of like where I sit, I tell people all the time that like I wasn't looking to start the lighthouse. Like it was said crassly, I guess, it's an opportunity that fell into my lap. And it never crossed my mind when I started going down this journey that really what I was doing was starting a business. People don't talk about that because, it's a nonprofit. No, it's a business. I'm an entrepreneur. And people will come to me, Black women in particular, and ask me questions about, I want to start my own nonprofit, whatever, and are often crestfallen because I'm like, don't do it, sis. Like, don't do it. It's a trap. It's a trick, really. And it's not that I haven't found a way to have some degree of success. We'll use that word, but it is that there is never not a landmine, one. And then the what's the phrase? Emotional labor. The emotional labor of walking the landmines, knowing that I have Black women, Black families on my back. Nobody asked me to think of it like that, but that's a part of, the way that Black folks show up. Like, if I'm doing this for me, I'm doing it for everybody. Well, I guess not a Black capitalist, but you get what I'm saying. Like, I'm doing it for everybody. And that is a whole other level of stress. So I think that a part of the push for Black women toward entrepreneurialism, not only is it fantasy, I low-key think it's another way to break us. I really do.
I agree. And I do want to give you credit because, one, you do understand that it's not just about you as the entrepreneur, right? We know that the majority of Black businesses are like sole proprietorships. So it's not actually people pouring back into the Black community with their businesses, hiring, logistics, any of those ancillary services. It's just Black people selling a service or a product and marketing Blackness to get money, right? What you're doing is very intentional about, creating an ecosystem where Black folks can work in the interest of other Black folks. And I think that's kind of what we're losing in the difference between like Black capitalism like Black economic infrastructure. Like every Black business wasn't trying to maximize profit. Some businesses understood, like, my role is to make sure that there are people who can have jobs, right? Or my role is to sometimes operate as a bank where I can invest in other services that are needed in the community. So I want to give you credit for operating in that model. To your point about this entrepreneurship breaking us, and to your point, Jared, also, because the representations of Black women have been so explicitly negative for past generations, what seems like Black women's empowerment being used and weaponized against us is something that's hard to convince people of, right? So when they see, I hate scandal, but I understand how Black women like seeing a Black woman navigate a white space. I watched a couple of episodes when she was the fixer, and I was like, oh, cool, it's a Black woman who's smarter than everybody else. I was like, but that's gonna get really like draining for her, fixing all these other people's problems. And then she fell in love with the white dude, and I was like, I'll never watch this again. Right. But it's the point that when we see, I mean, she's impeccably dressed, she's elitely educated, she's respected and feared everywhere she goes. Like, for Black women who previously had only negative stereotypes, right? That seems like an improvement. That seems like progress. That seems aspirational to the point we don't recognize that this is all for empire, right? It's a great thing to have a Black woman. I just seen another one. I was doing research about cop TV shows in, during the Black Lives Matter movement, and I just seen another one where it's a Black woman. I was like, I get it, right? Putting Black women as heads of state, right? As leaders in empire, it becomes aspirational. It's like, yeah, I can do that. I just saw something about what we need to do to, what does it say? To address the harm that AI is doing to Black communities is get more Black girls to be content creators. And I was like, it was like, if we can get Black girls to be the innovators of AI, then I was like, oh, but I see how this would work, right? And then you go on a campus, and all of the new classes and shiny things at the school are pushing you to engage AI as a person. And then you see the new chatbot that has the sassy voice and the animal print, and she's like, hey girl, right? So it seems like this is a place for us that affirms us. So it's unfortunate that we can kind of see it, but we can see people getting wrapped up into it. But I get it, right? If you've had Mammy and Sapphire, and you go from that to having like a Black woman who seems like she's in control, I can see how a generation without a grounding in a longer tradition of revolutionary or radical Black women would gravitate to that, right? Because it's so cool. They get to wear the best stuff, they get to drive the coolest cars, nobody tells them what to do, they have these illustrious homes, they have terrible relationships with their mothers, right? And are completely isolated from the Black community, but who cares, right? They living it up. It's troublesome because you see students, especially like Black students, being so indoctrinated into it, right? And flipping it to say, this is what new Black womanism looks like, or this is what new Black women's empowerment looks like. And it's like, who taught you that? That's wrong. And then they're like, you can't say I'm wrong because my Blackness it's varied and I'm an Afrofuturist. And you just be like, just read stuff I be telling you to read.
So it's wild. I mean, so much of this, I'm just dealing with again this past week. I just lost my thought. The example you were just giving.
About the students and the I don't know.
the students and
them being indoctrinated into this new idea of what Black women's empowerment looks like.
yeah, but you were saying, oh my goodness, I can't believe I can't. Well, one of the points, one of the arguments was that, and I was definitely wanted to bring up with both of you today. I can't believe I just lost the thought that fast. But was that one of my students was having a back and forth with me about her eyelash business, and she is convinced that after even a semester of dealing with me and my perspective and my biases in the classroom and the stuff we've been reading and all of this and this, that, and the third, she was still convinced that the pathway is business and entrepreneurialism. And she was saying, I'm going to have this successful eyelash business. And she said, in fact, she did have one. She said, and I said, well, it's obvious you don't. And she said, why? And I said, because you're in my class. I said, if you were really successful, you'd have left a long time ago. Mm-hmm. But I also said, but I also was trying to say that I also know that there's severe limitations on it, just because I know your clientele, for the most part, are Black women and college students. So you can't be making that much money. And then the issue that we ended up going back and forth on was that I said, listen, I am not against you trying to turn a talent and a skill and an interest into some money earning. I don't have a problem with you turning this into a business. I'm not arguing against that. And when I used to have hair, that's who I would have been looking for to do my hair. I'm good. The problem is when you're saying that all this other stuff we've been talking about in terms of Black studies and revolution and this is all unnecessary because I can do this eyelash business. That's where we start to have the disconnect. And then worse, I said, because she said she was also selling courses on how to set up an eyelash business.
People love to sell a course.
They love to sell a course.
But that's when I said, you got to stop doing that. Because I said, you're ripping. I said, now you've gone into the grift. So and then we had a very detailed conversation. I said, if you're selling your labor doing someone's eyelashes, I have no problem with that. If you are training someone how to do eyelashes and selling that, I don't have a problem with that. When you start to say, I'm going to teach you for pay how to set up an eyelash business, that's when I said, now you've gone into the grift, because I had previously made the point that as soon as someone says I'm selling you classes on how to get rich, that's when you know you're in the hustler territory.
Yeah.
As just a baseline, I think that's and she said, well, why? And I said, because you have not set up a successful eyelash business, yet you want to make money selling courses on how to set up an eyelash business. That is the grift. And then she said, but I do have an eyelash successful. And I said, no, you don't, because you're my class. That's how the conversation went. Because I was like, that if you were great, if you were rich, people who make it rich in Wall Street do not sell classes on how they did it. That's the whole point. They found a hustle, a scheme, a con, or whatever the hell else they're doing, and they're not selling that. That's the whole point. So that's why there's something else you had just said, and when I go back and watch this, I'm going to find I'm going to be. Real quick, I did want to ask earlier if I do watch,
when you
Nature
do.
Boy,
right?
Will you invite me back to discuss it? That would be my request.
I don't
want to watch it for nothing.
Yes, we definitely do.
Because I will watch it. I watched the Hulu series at least. I don't know about this 400-part thing on YouTube. You said, but the 4-part on Hulu or whatever, I'll watch that, and then and then I'll no disrespect, Dr. Clay. I know you said
no. Listen.
I'm saying we watched it together.
Yeah, we did. I'm not saying you shouldn't watch it because I didn't watch it, enjoy it. I'm saying because once you watch it, you can't unwatch it.
Right.
Right. And I mean, it devolves into a lot of things that are just, and I'm going to segue from Nature Boy to what I was going to say. Because we're talking about grifting and stuff, right? So the issue that bothers me about what happens with Black people and specifically with Black women is there's a fundamental understanding of how much we're hurting, of how much we are longing for belonging, for
Did you say
affirmation, for compassion,
understanding or misunderstanding? Sorry.
understanding, a clear
Okay.
understanding of
Okay.
how much we long, because you know the Nature Boy grift comes along at a perfect time, because the idea was that the United States is just dangerous for Black people, right? There's all these state killings, there's all these vigilante killings of Black people. This is around 2005, 2015, 2016, right? So there's a lot of people, and I write about this in the book I'm writing, who are turning to social media looking for an outlet from, like you said, outside of those four walls. When I'm looking outside, my community is desolate. People are hurting. I'm hurting. So people started looking to social media for a way out. And what someone you see on social media under a rainfall in Honduras telling you, the problem is that the city life is too busy, it's too distracting, it's Babylon, right? And you can free yourself by getting in nature. That's not a bad idea, right? The idea that unplugging from the hustle and bustle of the city and getting back in tune with nature can be connected to Black radicalism, ancestral practice, and things like that. So that's not the issue, right? The idea that Black women need positive images of them, that's not the problem. The issue is when you start making people give you money to try to make it true, right? So the thing that happened with the Nature Boy situation is he went down there and he invited people, and like 3 people came, but one of the people had money, and he was like, oh, I can use this money. So he built something that looked good enough to attract other people, and then when they came, he took their money, right? And was like, well, now it's you have to proselytize this so we can grow this tribe. So you have all these people who got into something to live off the land, who are spending 8 to 10 hours on social media trying to get money to keep living off the land. But I say that because the attraction of it, right? People wanting something that they think can help, right? People wanting something that they think will be beneficial in the absence of being connected to people who can help them just in life, is, it's the isolation of capitalism that makes us susceptible to the grift, right? What bothers me as an educator is the anti-intellectualism that comes in the idea of what it takes to build anything, right? People are like, oh, I'm gonna create a class, or I'm gonna do a syllabus or a curriculum. And I always try not to be like, that's not what a syllabus is. That's not what a curriculum is. This is a lesson plan. This is a study guide, right? That's not the same thing as intentionally figuring out how to align material, activities, assessment, and all that. So people are selling these classes, and people are thinking that there's something they're going to learn that's going to help them. And for Black women, that plays into this most educated, right? Black women are the most educated, the most degreed. So now it's given this validity. This is why I put the no honorary, right? Because people be just buying the degrees for the validity, because now you can sell somebody something. And I think that Black women, more than men, are super susceptible to the idea of selling expertise to each other and those who will buy it, right? Because we look and we say, oh, she did this business without proof of concept.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I wrote this down, like a what's this called? With the arrows. Girl boss feeds into representation, feeds into aesthetic, which feeds into consumerism and Black buying power. So really what we're doing, if we go back when we're talking about the self-care, is that we are taking Black women's taking Black women's needs, monetizing exhaustion, and seeking validation so that we'll spend more money.
So if I followed you, the only thing I would want to add to your diagram is an initial point about how Black girl magic or Black excellence is marketed. So it's so we're also just talking about this week that Sut Jali gives this lecture that I refer to all the time about the advertising models and the accepted sequence versus the revised sequence. And the accepted sequence is the one that's promoted all the time that says something to the effect, we get what we want. So the reason, popular hip hop is so bad is because that's what the people want. The reason the reason all we get are Tyler Perry movies is because that's what you said you want. So we give you what you want. And I hear a version of that in my classes all the time. Students will say, well, we some version of that where they're saying, well, we only ask for that, so this is all we get. And but Jali comes back with what is the revised model, which is where you put in that the initial role of the advertiser, which is to promote the products that those who can manufacture those and own those products can sell. So the same thing happens through propaganda and mythology with ideas. So that's why I usually point to that Nixonian moment, but there are many others where those in power said, we want to promote Black excellence instead of Black power. Then it gets accepted and then put into the process that I think you were just describing very well. And that's the component that I think we often are encouraged to leave out, that our attitudes and our public opinion is largely shaped before we even recognize it. The other thing I just wanted that I did remember what I was going to say is that you mentioned this. I had that exact moment. I had a student where you mentioned the call to STEM to bring Black girls into STEM and we'll be free. I had a student who she was polite about it, but she was just a couple weeks ago was giving me a little bit of a pushback because she was being influenced by another professor, a colleague of mine who has a different perspective, and was making that argument through this other professor that she was listening to, that if more of us got into STEM related fields, we would be free. And then she sent me some of my colleagues' work. And I read two of her peer-reviewed journal articles, both of which are different versions of the same argument, which do make those claims that if we get more Black girls, specifically Black girls, into cybersecurity and this or that form of coding, that this will benefit the Black community through jobs, employment, and enrichment, and so on and so forth. And I'm just like, there's no data that supports those claims, and there's nothing historically that would support those claims, and it's just not an argument I find much value in. But it is there and being encouraged. And the thing that we don't encourage, and we're not encouraged, and that the students are not encouraged, is to say, which I really want to do, and I've almost gone overboard with this, stop focusing on your behavior. You are not poor because you didn't get the right training, or you don't have the right financial literacy, or your cousin and them don't know how to get a mutual fund, and you're not like, this is not why we're poor. Mm-hmm. So we can all be better. We can all, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you were really down to your last $5, get a loaf of bread and some rice and you know what I'm saying, and hunker down instead of going and get a cheap bottle of beer. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, we can all be a little, responsible, but that's not why anybody is broke as a community, for sure. So what I keep wanting to point to is that where is all this wealth we're all producing going? And that's what I want to. So even if I'm a mess as a human being, I've still helped produce $23 trillion in GDP for this country. And the $54 trillion that Forbes said a couple weeks ago, the 1% have in wealth in this world. Like, distribute that, redistribute that, and stop telling me to be a better businessman.
That's a fact. And here's it's not a pushback, it's a redirect, because I do social science, right? And what I know is that they want to get Black kids in STEM for different reasons, and I want to get Black kids in STEM, right? Because if we're talking about redistricting, if we're talking about congressional maps, if we're talking about any of the measures that we need to organize, for Black liberation, we need data. We also need to know enough about data to be critical, because if we had a better critical lens based in science, technology, math, we would see through the myth, right? We would see through it, because we would say these numbers don't add up, right? So my push to get Black kids into STEM stuff is because we need to be able to collect and analyze data, right? We need to be able to better understand the material conditions in our communities, where the needs are, where our resources are, what's feasible, what's fundable, right? So data is fundamental for liberation, but the shortcut is just take a coding class. So what I'm going to teach you, I'm not actually getting you into STEM, but I'm using STEM to teach you a very specific skill that's going to serve empire and imperialism. So they're not actually getting into STEM, right? They're not learning how to do linear or quadratic equations. They're not learning economic models so they can look at supply and demand curves. They're just being marketed to it as a way to make money, right? A way that you can shortcut with a certificate to be able to get a job. Because it's like, no, we definitely need Black folks in STEM. Like, I love teaching research methods to Black students. I love showing them, if you want to understand disparities or how disparities are calculated, or like you said, the difference between, if you understand how wealth operates, how it's amassed, how interest built, how it compounds, right? How debt works. I believe it would allow you to look at the world in a more Blackly radical way, but that's not the STEM education they're getting. They're getting like fast tracking the cybersecurity, fast tracking the coding. And then these institutions are then using that increased presence to make an argument that it's working, right? Such and such percent of students who graduate, such and such percent of Black students who graduate with these degrees get jobs that pay this much. Not even recognizing that there's a cap on those positions anyway. There's maybe 3 more years of needing folks to do this cybersecurity work, right? And then all the students who started off with these very niche majors, in 4 years, they're not going to be able to find jobs because the sector has shifted.
Well, because nothing about the economy. This is my point, though. Nothing in all of that addresses capitalism as an economy or Black people's relationship to it. So it is like, nobody would go back to the 17th century on a plantation and point to enslaved Africans and say that their material conditions are the result of their financial illiteracy. Nobody would point to them and say, if you would better pool your resources, blah, 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 blah. If you set up a small business on the corner of the plantation, you would be able to free. Like, nobody would make those arguments. People would be like, no, damn, they're enslaved. This is a mess. They need to be freed. It's the institution of slavery that needs to be addressed before we can start talking about whatever they don't know or whatever their poor levels of education. Like, even you wouldn't even be able to say your material conditions as an enslaved African are the result of you not properly reading and speaking the English language. Like, that's not why that's not why this is happening. That's not. But here we are in 2026, and because of all of the nominal changes and all of the, real change. I'm not trying to act like we're on plantations, but so there's been real change, but because of that fundamental relationship not changing, that fundamental relationship of race and class and capital not changing, people are now able to say, through some fantasy of a free and open economy, which is itself a promoted mythology, a propagated mythology intentionally created over the last 150 years or so. Like now they're able to make those kinds of claims and to say, well, if we get more Black people in STEM, or if we get more Black people, running for office, or we get more Black people getting college degrees or owning homes or whatever. I mean, but that's not, and all of it at the end of the day is a distraction, because that's not what and that's why I used to make the joke, like, yeah, okay, fine. Everybody go out and get a STEM education and do all the, fix our hair and our names and our clothes, and we're all at the bus stop at 5 a.m, and we all have our STEM degrees and certificates, and we all have our, circulating dollars and small business and entrepreneurial certificates and we have all of that. Like, let's do it. And then I'm like, because by noon we would have the revolution that I fantasize about, because everybody would then realize, all right, this has nothing to do with why we're poor. Like, this, none of this solves any of these problems. But yeah, so I don't know.
This was great. This was great. We'll spend our last few minutes looking at some of the comments, but one of the things that I have appreciated about you, Jared, and when I've heard you talk about your book and work with other people, one of the things that people tend to do to you, and I guess to a lot of folks, when you're bringing up offering new ideologies and philosophies, is to reduce it to, well, what do you think we ought to do then? And I appreciate that for the most part, your response is typically some version of, I'm not sure, it's a thing we have to figure out together. I just appreciate that about you. I think it is the hallmark. It's one of the things, though this is, about, not about your book specifically, even with charity, like, well, what do we do about that? I'm not sure. We have to figure it out together. That even along this liberation journey, it is a collective conversation. And I just, I appreciate that about smart people.
Thank you. I get enough criticism for not having the solution people want. So I do appreciate that. Yeah.
I think a part of that is because people want, and it makes sense. Our lives are all over the place, and I think people want formulas. They want quick fixes, and there are very few things that have formulas and quick fixes. So yeah, I just have always appreciated that about you. Let's pop up a few comments, Mr. Producer, sir, and then we'll wind down. Did I put you on the spot, sorry? It's capitalism, though. The Ponzi scheme, creating value off the labor of others, rent-seeking behavior. That's hilarious to me, rent-seeking behavior.
So just quickly, if I can, the only reason I wouldn't want to call it a Ponzi scheme, not to be pedantic or whatever, but is that it does produce something. And that's the contradiction that certainly some materialists struggle with, that it produces. In fact, I was literally just looking at Stalin's dialectical historical materialism, and he talks about that contradiction, that capitalism produces enough to show that we can produce everything people need. We just have to redistribute it, and then we can advance into even better levels. So that's the only slight thing I would want to challenge on. It's not a Ponzi scheme. Capitalism does produce. A Ponzi scheme is technically, doesn't produce anything. Sorry, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
You just dinged a point that I had lost. Damn, did I lose it again? No. The idea also is specifically with this representation of Black women, there's this association of poverty with inferiority, with dirty, with everything we don't want to be. And those are the same. And what has happened is like socialism has been associated with poverty in a way that like Black women are like, I don't want to be poor. Like I want to be the opposite of whatever that poor thing is. So when people talk about socialism, they're assuming poverty. And I say that because your point, right? The exact amounts of wealth capitalism produces, if socially redistributed, would be a better system. But it's that idea that you can't have socialism and have money, right? The idea that the only way you can have anything valuable in this society is through capitalism. And I think that becomes the thing about the solutions that we offer. Because it's like, well, if you gotta like Black people, right? You gotta have a consciousness about the conditions that Black people are under and experiencing, right? You gotta work alongside Black people and value them. And then people automatically assume that to like communalism equals poverty, right? So you just want us all to be, no, that's like y'all projected it because y'all only look at, I think it's the idea that when people look at socialist movements or communist movements, because they're driven by working class and poor people, the perception is that poverty is the goal. like spreading poverty is the goal of socialism, and not recognizing that
spread poverty, not wealth. Capitalism. As to spread poverty, not wealth.
Yeah. So it's like no,
but it's that. But that's the point. They don't look at those movements. They only hear the headlines from the propaganda against those movements.
Correct. Right. They're not.
You make a great point. Yeah.
Right. And that, to your point, right? We believe that a lot of this stuff is organically developed when we're literally being told what to think, told what to read, told how to read it. Yeah.
I mean, I ask people all the time, like, what's like people say, like my students for sure, but just even fully grown adults you say, like, they'll say these headlines, like, well, what's the last time you studied? What have you read about the Cuban Revolution or the Russian Revolution or the Vietnamese Revolution? And they'll be like, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, you haven't even looked at it. You turn on Fox News or CNN and they say, the Cubans are poor. And you're like, oh, it's the socialist.
Yeah, like, right. It's the communism that makes them poor.
The communism that made them poor, and capitalism gives us so much. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, what do you have? That's the thing, right? Capitalism gives us so much and we don't, where is it?
I think it also requires a new narrative around what it means to be poor. I think when we are living, if we ever lived in a world where human rights were part of our everyday life, poor would actually not be as miserable as people make it out to be, because that means I have a roof over my head, I have food to eat. Maybe I don't have as many options, but all of these things that I am due simply because I was born. If I have less money than you, that's okay, because I have all the things I need. And I think that is also part of the problem. It's not just that. I even think about, I think about this a lot when we do they do the education rankings, and people will often bring up like, oh, Mississippi is 49th or 50th, 48th, whatever in this. Okay, well, if we're ranking things, then somebody is always going to be 49th or 50th. That does not mean, however, that 49 and 50 have to be abysmal. What it means is that we're ranking.
All I said is LeBron is not better than Jordan. That don't mean he's terrible.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
let's see somebody's gonna be mad in the comment section off of that one, but listen to me when I'm saying it.
Yeah, no, and again, it's super Western. It speaks to the way that Black folks in the United States have bought into it. I remember I took a group of HBCU students to Senegal, and they weren't able to see the wealth in communalism, right? The idea that there's 4 families living in a compound and have common areas, right? But there's no mortgage. There's no homeowners insurance and property tax. They've owned these things and built them over time. But, so I'm telling them, like, this has a natural irrigation system. Like, they're collecting rainwater, right? They're communally eating. The food is fresh, but they're looking like the roads aren't as paved, right? But then when there's like a Mercedes Benz that drives by, they're like, oh, they got Benzes in Africa? And it's like your orientation to what wealth looks like, right, is just completely different. To your point, right? What poverty looks like, what poverty is made to feel like is a construction, right? The idea that, oh, we don't, because I was, when I went and we were talking about homelessness, and one of my Senegalese friends was like, nobody's technically homeless because we're not going to deny someone food and a place to stay, right? We just don't do that, right? And it's like, that's wealth, right? The fact that they can say the whatever we have, everybody has, that's a type of wealth that the students were like, but y'all like, y'all don't look like. So they, they were like, oh, we want to go to the clubs in Dakar. And I was like, you want to pop bottles and do the most Western thing you can, but still say you went to Africa, right? And miss out on the fact that things can look different, so you can see that things can be different.
I want to say I ate at McDonald's.
They were like, Dakar. There's a KFC. No, it was a AFC.
Oh wow.
African fried chicken.
Oh wow.
Because imperialism is everywhere, right? The fact is, it's not, the continent's not untouched by it. So you see remnants there. You see people there wanting to imitate Black American culture in the same way.
Absolutely.
One of my friends who's a muralist, when he comes to the United States, he always takes pictures to show the kids, like, you see how terrible it is in the United States? Like, y'all want to go here, but like, it's not fundamentally better than what we have here.
Last comment, and then we're gonna finish our wind down. The incentive structure is distress. The more distressed you are, the better a target you are. This is capitalist exploitation. That might be a good thing to end on right there. Sad, but a good place to stop. We will definitely have you back. You are amazing, Dr. Jared Ball.
Well, you have to now. I appreciate that, but you have to now because I'm watching that series. So we're now, we're now locked in because I'm not. That's the only reason I'm watching it, or the number one reason, I should say. So you have to have it.
Definitely will. We definitely will. Thank you so much. I hope that you all enjoy your Friday, your weekend. I hope something brings you a moment of joy. Lean into your whimsy, and let's keep along this liberation journey.
Facts.
Right on. Thank you both very much. This has been great.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much. Always a pleasure to see you, Jared.
Yeah, likewise.
Natalie, people, thanks for joining in.
Bye, friends. Hit the music, DJ. No, you were really supposed to hit it, sir.
And daily and nightly self-determination
Read June
may
Jordan.
very well
Listen to
cost
June
you
Jordan.
your life. I can't go out without changing my clothes, my shoes, my body posture. I can't do what I want to do with my own body, and who in the hell set things up like this? I was wrong again to be me being me where I was. Wrong to be who I am. I am very familiar with the problems of the CIA, and the problems of white America in general, and the problems of the teachers and the preachers and the FBI and the social workers and my particular mom and dad. I am very familiar with the problems because the problems turn out to be me. I am the history of the terrorized incarceration of myself. I am the history of battery, assault, and limitless armies against whatever I want to do with my mind and my body and my soul. I am not wrong. Wrong is not my name. And I can't tell you who the hell set things up like this, but I can tell you that from now on, my resistance, my simple and daily and nightly self-determination may very well cost you your life.